Blog number 5. Michael Randall, dog lover. What owning a dog tells me is that you're so lonely you could pick up shit. Frankie Boyle. It's been a while since my last blog post, so this one's going to be a long entry. If that prospect alone is daunting enough as you skim past, know that it's written earnestly from the heart as such that I will simultaneously try to exploit it and sell you something by its end. I'm sorry and you're welcome. There was a song Mad Spanner used to play quite often that didn't quite make the last album, and again missed the cut on this next one. I Didn't Kick Your Dog. A bit of an apt title, but it had a storytelling aspect about being misunderstood that was fun to perform live. It was a song specifically about not kicking dogs. It went like this. I went out on a lovely walk the other morning when out of nowhere a dog flew round the corner and I fell over it. The old lady appeared and she said, "You kicked my dog?" And I said, "No, madam, I actually fell over." And she said, "No, I'm calling the police. You kicked my dog." And I said, "No, I didn't kick your dog. I lost my balance." And she said, "You spawn of Satan." And I said, "No, misunderstanding." What actually happened is that I tripped over the pug-faced cunt. I'd shout that over and over. The timing of the thrash grind coming in was very important to get right, which, given that I use backing tracks, is the reason why the 60-second track had been sidelined for so long. There was even a special version that was only ever played live once, where we dropped tuning and played an extended death metal version, as a treat for those who had seen Mad Spanner several times and had already heard the joke enough times. One version has better comedic timing, while the other absolutely slams, but the comedic element gets lost. The indecision choosing between which version to record lost its spot on the album again, but it will certainly return to the setlist one day. Like Thrush. Along with playing I Didn't Kick Your Dog so many times in Mad Spanner's earliest years, there was this rehashed post from my personal Facebook over to the band page recently, as follows. Going out for a date with a dog lover. Her. I had a cuddle buddy who had the most beautiful husky I'd ever seen. Me. Cool! I punched a husky in the head once. It's a joke that works better without any context whatsoever, and explaining the details of its true story would blunt the impact. I love situations of the absurd where people are forced to question why and don't get an answer. However, I was warned by a friend that I have to be careful what I post online, as people who don't know me might take it on face value and might not book or see a show with a dog-punching shithead. Perhaps. But as long as these jokes I can defend, I don't really care about being misunderstood by people who either don't understand my humour or who find it offensive. Life is way too short. I want to highlight Die Ihr von Satan by the band Tool. It's an industrial track sounding like an ominous and hateful Nazi rally, but anyone who could understand German would tell you it's actually just someone declaring ridiculous ingredients for a cake recipe. I took a lesson from this, learning about its translation, is that you should always try and question your first gut impressions of something and never judge a book by its cover. If someone would judge me for the act of punching a husky without thinking how I could possibly do such a thing, well, then the joke's on you. So my point, if there is one, or my confession, is that with all this talk about not kicking dogs and punching huskies, is that I'm a massive fan of dogs. I absolutely love them. With all my existential angst and manic depressive tendencies, there's something about the dumb and expressive happiness of dogs that reminds me to chill the fuck out and embrace the simple things in life. I can't afford to look after a doggy woggy, nor have the time to look after one as I travel so often. But I really enjoy taking other people's dogs for walks and seeing the joyous expressions chasing after a ball. The profound concept of ball seems to be the happiest I see in dogs, which I find the most infectious. If there was an example of the absurd hero that Albert Camus wrote about, then I'd point to the dog chasing back and forth to catch and retrieve the ball over and over again, if the dog wasn't in complete, unquestioning ignorance of its existence. I adore big, clumsy dogs, but my favourite breeds are working dogs like Springer Spaniels with all their boundless energy. I don't share the same fondness for the yappy little shits like terriers, but I'm not exactly dog racist. If anything, the smaller and more territorial breeds I find more entertaining with all their eccentricities. My mum owns a terrier called Taffy, who's been rehomed about 5 or 6 times growing up as a puppy, so he's developed this terrible separation anxiety, or just anxiety full stop, as he's constantly looking over its shoulder and panting like he's reliving the horrors of Nam. But then it's matched by this fierce protectiveness of its owner, and a tendency to go a bit mad, jumping off furniture and accidentally sprinting into walls or doors. A weird fucking dog, but I love him all the more for it. I used to be a live-in carer, which by extension also meant looking after 2 Yorkshire Terriers who were bizarrely given human names, Annie and Andy. They had plenty of quirks of their own. When the daughter of this looked-after person dropped off a husky for a couple of days, Annie and Andy were fiercely territorial with their incessant barking and were to be separated by 2 doors at all times from the husky. Gotcha! I can follow instructions, at least until I forget them. Piercing yapping, a bark, then pained yelping piercing through aggressive gnawing. The husky had picked up Annie's head in its jaw, lifted her in the air and violently shook it from side to side in a way it was obviously going for the kill. Adrenaline hit as I pulled the husky back by its pelt and, while terrified, punched the husky twice in the head, knowing there was a possibility it would attack me next. Luckily, it let go obediently and didn't put up too much resistance as I closed the door behind it, while poor whimpering Annie was carried off with blood pouring from its eye socket. Thankfully, there was no long-term injury sustained, but it was still a truly awful experience. Jokes are funnier when you don't have to explain them. This was basically the blog post, but it comes at the perfect timing when that new shipment of Mad Spanner t-shirts had just arrived. I'm not shy in my declaration that it's my favourite design of absolutely anything ever. It was first born from Kieran Scott, Ashen Crown, Death Collector, Grimorte, etc, 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 etc. Kieran Scott and I trying to come up with this most bizarrely offensive t-shirt ever. The most bizarrely offensive t-shirt ever. He really knocked out of the park producing this monstrosity of a t-shirt design of a literal pug-faced cunt. If there's any shame from wearing my own band merch, I have absolutely none of it wearing this. Fun fact is that in making the first batch, there was a debate in the band if the word cunt should be censored. Mad Spanner was always democratic as a group, other than this one specific time when I, the tyrant dictator, ruled against the 2 versus 1 vote. I couldn't imagine someone finding the word offensive as much as everything else on the shirt, and that censoring the word would only blunt its impact. No half measures. This was a shirt that had to be all or nothing, and I'm still so tremendously happy to see and hear about people wearing this abomination in public. New shirts available through Bandcamp at £15. Link below. Thanks very much for listening.